And the breaking news just came out moments ago. This from Jeff Passan of ESPN. The Mets hiring David Stearns as the president of baseball operations. Stearns, 38, will take over once the regular season is over. Again, David Stearns, formerly of the Milwaukee Brewers, taking over the behemoth in New York. Again, the fallout from this year, where they were the number one payroll of all time, the New York Mets. Inexplicably, it did not work. They tore it down. Stearns comes in. I'll just throw in 7 years with the Milwaukee Brewers from 2015 to 2022. Made the playoffs 4 years. Highly competent organization on a slightly lower payroll, right. And also a ball club that had a very modern baseball ops department. David Stearns helped install that. Your thoughts on the move?
Oh, I think it's a great hire for him. One point not mentioned, he grew up in this area. So, I think this is a very unique area. I think it's unique, the pressures of the job. I think he's at the perfect age to do it, level of experience. There was no drama ever coming out of Milwaukee. They did everything, very consistently year in and year out. And I think the thing he did the most, which I think he'll immediately bring over to New York, is they developed a really unique pitching strategy. Mm-hmm. They didn't have a ton of high draft picks. They took lower draft picks and turned them into aces. And so that formula, I feel like he'll bring with him to New York, which is the hardest thing to develop and keep continuity of in our game.
Was this happening all along? Because we've heard that Steve Cohen wanted David Stearns. Stearns stepped away from the Brewers for a year. We didn't know exactly why. Is this what was happening?
I think Steve Cohen and the Mets have had their eye on David Stearns for years, and he has had his eye on them for years, and it just needed to play itself out. As Dan said, ownership wouldn't let David speak to the Mets a year ago, and so that led to this, sabbatical, whatever exactly he's been doing here for these last 9-10 months, waiting for this moment in time. And David's incredibly sharp. He's a leader. He has a great feel for the data, but he also has a great feel for interacting with people, leading people. The next question I think a lot of people will have is Craig Counsell, who is about to be a free agent as a manager in Milwaukee, going to follow him to New York?
All right, so Buck Showalter's the manager. Billy Epler is the general manager. What happens to them? Do they stay? Because we could be a president of baseball operations and then a GM below him, or does that not work that way?
The way David had it in Milwaukee with Matt Arnold, who's now currently the GM. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Maybe he and Billy already have a relationship. I personally don't think Billy's ego is such he'd have any issue with this at all. It's just more about philosophically. All those jobs have to line up philosophically, where you look at everything and believe everything the same way. If they don't, you need to make a change, because you don't need that kind of tension and drama when you're trying to implement your system.
And, keep in mind, the Mets just let go a bunch of people in their front office, obviously to clear the way for the next president of baseball operations to bring in his own people. And so, the plan right now is for Billy Epler to stay and work with David. Billy's been very up to speed on the fact that this was a likely development. If not David, somebody else come in as president of baseball ops. But how far it leads, I don't know. I don't think Buck Showalter deserves to lose his job, but we know how the business works.
Right.
When you hire a new leader, he wants his own people.
It's fascinating. I agree with it. Right. Buck Showalter brought a level of competence. I'll use that word again.
To the
Mets,
he's done a great
especially
job
last
there.
year, changed it dramatically.
Absolutely.
That would be a shame. But again, David Stearns coming over to the Mets, president of baseball operations. Again, that news just breaking. Again, 7 years in charge with the Brewers, a club that was about 19th or 20th in payroll year to year. Now he's dealing with a club that has no problem being a runaway number one.
Yeah, I'm sure, though, Steve Cohen didn't hire him for that reason. I bet he hired him for the other reason, because he did have success with a lower payroll. Now he has more flexibility, but I don't think the discipline that he had in Milwaukee will change dramatically in New York.
Yeah, it's a fascinating run for the guys who ran the cheaper clubs that went to the expensive clubs.
See what kind of adjustment they make.
Andrew Friedman or Chaim Bloom, right.